Hey everyone, welcome to Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce. We're coming to you as always courtesy of our broadcasting partner moretalk.tv. I'm honored today to welcome to the show James Van Auken. James is a graduate of St. Leo University with a master's in business administration, and he is also a mindfulness practitioner and the director of Atlantic University. As a faculty member for Atlantic University and the Casey Riley School of Massage, he has studied mindfulness with Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh and mindfulness-based stress reduction techniques with John Kabat-Zinn. He is a featured presenter at the upcoming A.R.E conference here in Virginia Beach entitled Experiencing Sacred Inner Realms, Awakening to the Call of Your Soul. And that takes place from January 16th through the 18th. His particular presentation is on present moment awareness and creating a meditative life. James, thank you so much for joining us today on Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce.
Thank you, Brent. It's nice to be back.
Excellent. And I wanted to first get into your background with Atlantic University. If you could tell our listeners a little bit about what you do, kind of the goings about of your day at Atlantic University.
Sure. At Atlantic University, I serve as the Director of Academic and Administrative Affairs. So in any given day, I'm working between the administrative staff, policies, procedures, the regular workings of an administrative higher education institution, and working with the faculty side, particularly, again, with policies and procedures and accreditation oversight in the curriculum and things like that. So it's kind of a pivot point position between faculty and administrative staff.
Excellent. And I want to talk a little bit about the degree program offered. It's a graduate degree in Transpersonal Studies. And for some of our listeners, they may not be totally familiar with what exactly Transpersonal Studies entails. So maybe you can give us a little bit of background about what the study course is, what the curriculum is, and the courses that are offered.
Sure. And I'd like to answer that maybe in two parts.
Yeah, of course.
First, you said transpersonal studies. What does that mean, the origin of it? You know, I think that it's kind of almost like a hidden jewel. I mean, this term was coined over 100 years ago by William James. Most people know William James as publishing The Varieties of Religious Experience. I know I read that book, and I have an undergrad in religion, and anybody who's spent some time in the academic world of religion, it's like you have to read The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. But if on the other side, you're more interested in psychology, you probably read his book, The Principles of Psychology, and it was there where he talked about this need to have a transpersonal studies element of psychology. And he was specifically emphasizing the fact that there's a soul, that consciousness involves many states, including spiritual and pathological. And then it almost was like that big assertion that he made just went kind of undetected. And when you get to the mid-20th century, there were two major schools of psychology. First, there was behaviorism, which, as most of us know, that's the study of the behavior of animals in order to learn more about people. Then on the other side, there was the Freudian side, which was psychoanalysis. But then Maslow came along and he said, what about these things that are more uniquely human? I think we're missing something. What about love and self-consciousness, personal freedom, morality? And as he asked all these questions, he actually formed what's now known as Humanistic Psychology, which has become the third major branch of psychology. But soon after he launched that, and really it took off, I mean, we know it well today, he and a group of psychologists said that they forgot something. They forgot the spiritual dimension of the human psyche. And when they acknowledged this, they created transpersonal psychology. So really, when Atlantic University was coming back in the late 1980s, it was, Charles Thomas Cayce was the president of Atlantic, or I'm not sure if he was the president at that time of the A.R.E, but he was directly involved in the reforming of Atlantic University. And my point was PhD in psychology. And then he rounded up a few other he rounded up a new administrator to become the president, and he was a PhD in psychology. Then they rounded up a few faculty members to start this, and they were all PhD in psychology. So they knew this. They knew about transpersonal studies. They saw how this transpersonal element would coincide with Edgar Cayce's philosophy and what he envisioned for a proper education. So to sum up, transpersonal studies is multidisciplinary. It's about exploration of higher consciousness, expanded self and identity, spirituality, and human potential. So our students in the Master of Arts of Transpersonal Studies will explore all of those things. They also, as you know, Brent, you dabbled in the program a bit.
Yeah.
Students will come in, they'll take courses in dream work, meditation, mythology, and a lot of self-reflection work. And then, of course, they can specialize because we offer different tracks. So you could specialize in applied spirituality, and take that literally, applying spirituality into your life and into your community. And then you could pick consciousness studies. If that's not so much what you want to do, consciousness studies. You could explore that area in more depth. You could go leadership and conflict transformation, or creativity and transpersonal visual arts. Or if you're a little more like me and you just want a little bit of all of it, general studies. So
Right.
it's kind of
Absolutely.
it's kind of how we are at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a wonderful degree program that's offered because it seems to be kind of a macro idea that's going on right now, a bit of a social movement where people are concerned about exactly what you have to offer within the curriculum of transpersonal studies. People are more interested in self-exploration, the idea of consciousness, both scientifically and spiritually. It's kind of the topic of now, which is great because your degree is, if somebody is interested in this and interested in getting an educational background, you guys are kind of at the forefront of offering that study track.
Right, which is really interesting because for many years it's been in the background. So
Right.
I think it goes to show that our society and our culture is looking for more, and we're asking for more, and we're no longer afraid to ask for that.
Right. Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about you're known amongst A.R.E community as a mindfulness practitioner. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly mindfulness is and how it is applied in your everyday life?
Sure. Well, essentially, mindfulness is about being aware of what's going on in the present moment. And that means being aware of bodily sensations. How do I feel? What's coming up? Even, there's one level of just checking in. How does my body feel right now? But there's another level of being aware of the simple fact that I'm sitting in a chair right now. You're sitting in a chair. Or somebody listening is driving in a car. Just a drop behind your normal level of awareness to just recognize that. Then there's the mental formations, the mental side. What am I thinking about? What am I dwelling on? What is the nature of my mind state today? Sometimes I like to compare it like with the weather. It's a bit foggy out today, but hopefully there'll be sunny skies in the afternoon. Especially after a holiday break. So mindfulness is about checking in. It's about adding a level of self-awareness and self-reflection with the purpose of having more self-management. And if anybody out there knows anything about emotional intelligence, you'll see those are actually the fundamentals of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness, self-reflection, self-management, and then the ability to be cognizant and aware of how our actions and behaviors affect our surroundings. How does my behavior affect my colleague next door if I'm in a great mood or a poor mood? How does it affect my family or my job? So to be a mindfulness practitioner, it simply, to me, means that I have set that as an ideal and I attempt to live that way consciously all the time. And I do it, I think there's a huge key here that it has to be a non-judgmental practice because it's impossible to be that way all the time. So the key is to allow myself to have reminders throughout the day that ask me, where's my attention now? How am I doing in this moment? And just accepting and acknowledging it for what it is. So if it's a
Okay.
negative thing, I acknowledge that it's negative without judgment. And I just am aware and I say, okay. And that becomes the way in to the present moment awareness. Just what's going on in the present moment. No judgment. There's a author out there who writes on this called, her name is Tara Brach, and she calls it radical acceptance. Radical acceptance of anything and everything. What is the moment containing? It's containing this, and I accept that.
Right.
So
That's great. I love that. It's definitely applicable for kind of the stressful go, go, go society that we're immersed in. You
mhm.
touched a bit on, I guess mindfulness, I'm sure, is a part of kind of the curriculum. It ties in with what's going on at AU and what you
Yes.
guys are teaching there. It's this more self-conscious awareness of who we are and in every way, the depth of our being. What did Cayce have to say about mindfulness or in relation to mindfulness?
Yeah, when I look at what Edgar Cayce said about it, I usually look in two areas. The first, he had a nice reading, I don't recall the number off the top of my head, about just paying attention to like nature, the sound of the
Hmm.
bird, the sound of wind blowing through trees, the cool grass underneath your bare feet in the springtime. And that's a way to drop into the present moment and just appreciate and acknowledge the natural world. And the natural world really does give us a way to just be present, just be present. And it seems to do that on its own, a nice reflection to us to get into the moment. So the first way I see Edgar Cayce talking about it is through nature and getting in touch. The second is a bit more conceptual. There are a number of readings where people came to Edgar Cayce asking for some guidance and help, of course. But this was more in the psychological area. And he said that very often we create barriers for ourselves by acting in a certain way, often reacting to certain things. And as we react instead of have awareness or choose our response, we create a barrier. And then that becomes a part of ourself. And he goes on to reiterate that he always says self will always meet self. So if we are creating a barrier that's part of ourself and we're not ever paying attention to it, we've always got this one level that's like a blockage. So he says by being aware of it, by being aware of our tendencies, by thinking of the other person and what our actions, like I mentioned earlier, create in them, then we can start to view the barriers as opportunities for growth. And
Right.
it's not easy. It can be painful to recognize that our certain habitual tendencies actually are painful to our spouses or our children or our colleagues. That hurts. And that's a big part of it. We have to be willing to look at it. What is it that I do that I need to change? And accept that it won't be easy to change it. And it seems like in a lot of the Edgar Cayce readings where he's talking about this, he actually is almost getting on people's cases pretty hard. Like, you've got to stop doing it. He does that where he writes, see, with a question mark. Don't you see what I'm saying?
Right.
And because it's hard. It's hard. And we have to accept it.
Hmm.
It takes a lot of compassion too, recognizing, you know, that, I mean, nobody said life was easy. But then again, that nobody gives us a manual either. So we have to go out searching for it and seeking for it. So that's why people asked him for some help. And he said, uh, notice what barriers you're creating. Take a look at what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you can become aware of it and change it, then you have learned that lesson and you'll move on. If you don't
Right.
do that, you'll just keep meeting it over and over again. There were like readings where people would say, ask about marital advice, and they had been on their third or fourth marriage. Uh, if they keep doing the same thing, you know, they're going to get divorced again, and so forth. That's not universal, but it's just indicative of our natural tendency to kind of live life outwardly. It's your fault, it's not mine. That's a selfish approach. So this is more of the selfless approach.
Right. Absolutely. It's a hallmark of the Cayce reading is that you are constantly meeting self. So,
Yeah.
if you don't learn it in one moment, there will be a moment, down the line where you will get another opportunity, and that cycle will continue until you acknowledge that lesson and work through it and realize that, it's always presented for me just in different forms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have new advances in technology that seem to be seemingly pulling us out of this present moment awareness. And this is something I want to touch on because you are doing a presentation at an upcoming conference here at the A.R.E. where you will be talking a lot about present moment awareness. And I love this idea. It's been something that I've been incorporating into my life for years now, and it truly kind of changes the way you react to your environment and just gives you, of course, this deeper awareness. So if you can talk a little bit about present moment awareness and what that all entails.
Sure. Um, it really has to begin with an acceptance, present moment awareness. What's in the present moment? As I mentioned earlier, it's usually one of three things. Usually, we're experiencing some mental formation, some thought, some memory, maybe even a daydream, um, or some sort of bodily sensation. So it might be an ache or a pain, um, or just some constant, um, I don't know, nerves giving us some information. And then I like to add a third element because also with present moment awareness, I mean, as I'm teaching this, we're also talking a bit about a meditative practice.
Right.
So I like to add for at least the meditative practice, there may be a level of spiritual experience occurring as well. So with present moment awareness, it's usually something going on in the mind, something going on in the body. So what's going on? We just have to ask ourselves. And recognize that it's also empirical as we're working with mindfulness and the mind. This is something that we can notice for ourselves. We can observe it on our own. It just requires this element of just stepping back slightly and observing more what's going on and then accepting it. So that's, I mean, with present moment awareness, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Right. Absolutely. And how has it affected you in your personal life, not only being a practitioner at home with your family, but also being a practitioner of mindfulness and present moment awareness in the workplace? What benefits have you seen from it?
I've personally seen tremendous benefits. Um, I'm not sure how I would have been able to do anything I'm doing today. I don't think my former self that wasn't aware of mindfulness could handle today's demands. Which just goes to say, I mean, you kind of are given what you can handle in the moment, and you have to evolve and adapt and learn. So for me, in my home life, it's really about, for me, recognizing what my preference is and not allowing um, anything that the family's doing to become a perceived hindrance to me having my preference. I mean, a very simple example is just getting off work at 5 p.m. and coming home to a young family. My preference might be to have some quiet time, to reflect a little bit and transition from the the concerns of the day to being with my family. And 5 o'clock, 5:30 is kind of the chaos time at the house. I mean, the kids are wild, they're tired, they're hungry, and my wife is at the end of her day being with them. So it is like, I mean, the crunch time of the day. So I have to recognize that my preference cannot become the roadblock. It can't become the hindrance to happiness. You know, I have to accept the situation as it is and jump into it. What can I do to make it better? That's the question that I have to remind myself. I mean, if I take it back to a non-critical time, because I think that dinner time, I mean, if there's everybody has different words for that, like arsenic hour, or there's a few others. We all know that it's crazy for families. But let's just say Sunday afternoon, I might want to watch a TV show or a baseball game or something, and my daughter wants to watch Curious George or whatever. Maybe she just wants to color a picture with me. Um, I use mindfulness to not get in the way of those things. I mean, why do I even need to watch the show? I mean, that's the deeper level. My
Right.
preference is acceptable. I can have a preference, but I don't want it to get in the way of something that's more important and more valuable. A lot of the teachers that I learned mindfulness from say the most valuable thing you can ever offer anybody, especially your family, is your own presence.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I personally try and strive to let go of those preferences and just be in the moment. And you know what? It's fun to draw and color pictures with a 4-year-old. It actually is kind of fun, and I'm glad I don't, deny that for, watching a few people strike out or hit a home run. So
Right. Absolutely.
that's a good way in the in the home that I use it. In the workplace, I tend to use it more. Um, uh, well, one way I'll say is listening. Listening. That's huge. Um, I mean, when people are telling me something, and let's say I'm their boss or their boss's boss, uh, am I listening? They will notice, and that is, I think, tremendously valuable. Um, uh, let's see here. When I talk about mindful listening, there's actually a few key elements of things that any of us can keep in mind. One is we have these natural tendencies when we're listening to people to want to do some of these things, like defend our own opinion or shift into telling your story. Me too. I experience that as well. And I'm guilty. I'm guilty of the first two, but I'm especially guilty of advice giving. So somebody tells you something, you say, you know what you should do is, and that's not so much listening. That's not so much listening. I'm trying to hear them fully acknowledge what they have to say. And if they need advice or opinions or confirmation or even just approval, you know, then I give that. But first and foremost, I want to share that I'm listening. Another thing is being able to truly hear what's going on. Sometimes there are layers upon layers of things going on in people's lives that are actually creating their behavior. So maybe we've got somebody who's frustrated or concerned or agitated. It may not be about what's coming out of their mouth. It may not be the situation that they're frustrated about. It may be a few levels deeper. So I try to bear that in mind as we're dealing with some of the more, let's just call it dealing with conflict in the workplace. Uh,
Hmm.
I also try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Um, and again, everything I just brought up is external. Um, I guess for me as well, I try to use mindfulness during the day um, to again not get out of touch with the deeper purpose of being in my job. I've been working between the A.R.E. and Atlantic University for nearly 12 years now. This coming April will be 12 years, and I've also worked closer to students, closer to the public, and now farther away from it. It's easy to get out of touch with the true reason why we're here, and that's service, right? That's serving the
Right.
students, serving the public, serving members, serving the community. Um, so I try to use it to be more aware of why I'm here and what's the purpose of my time in this job. I also think it's good for helping to manage my own emotions. I certainly, you know, people usually label me as pretty calm and cool and level-headed, but I can get frustrated or agitated too, um, particularly by people who are pushing an agenda. Um, so I have to use mindfulness to be aware of what's going on. How is this affecting me? Am I starting to become angered? Am I starting to have fear or anxiety? And recognize that emotions are here to draw my attention to them. They're actually here to protect. Anger shows up to protect me. That's a bodily response to protect. Fear shows up to protect, to draw our attention to something that may be dangerous. So I have to use my own ability to acknowledge the emotions that come up, and then be able to use the executive center of my brain to choose how I want to respond. And that can be challenging, but with practice, it becomes easier. So I try
Right.
to use it in every aspect of my life.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you touch on so many different benefits that, excuse me, that we see from being a mindfulness practitioner and being constantly putting an effort to be aware of what's going on both in our internal environment and kind of how it's creating our external environment. And it really is all about how you react, which I love that, because you get you grow in depth of awareness of how you really react to everything and how that's what's building your reality. It's as Cayce said, mind is the builder, and I think as
Hmm.
a mindfulness practitioner, you get to see how deep that really goes, and
Hmm.
through the experiences that you have. And I mean, experience really is the best teacher. You can read as many books as you want, but until you're applying these principles, applying these ideals, and sticking to them, you don't really get that full depth of awareness, that wisdom.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, and yeah, I think mindfulness is that key to bridge um, like spirituality and ideals and intent with actual application throughout the day.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but again, it's mindfulness is also built upon a meditative practice. So the idea
Right.
is that you've got a meditative practice, so you're aware of your body's natural tendencies, you're aware of present moment, and you've done it more in that concentrated effort in a meditative, practice, like a laboratory. So then when you go out into the day, you've already got a head start on awareness and recognition. And then you can go back to it and recognize, like I said at the beginning, how's the weather today? How's the weather of my
Right.
own mind and body and emotions? But
Right.
yes, I think
Absolutely.
it's through the application comes the knowing.
Yeah. Of course.
Hmm.
And this all seems like it really is such a beneficial practice, and we've gone over some of the benefits and how it's affected you in your life, and I couldn't agree more with what you brought up. So why is it that people aren't all practicing this? What are the blocks that you've seen as a mindfulness practitioner that stops people? Is it just that they're not aware of it, they've never been introduced to the idea, or is there more to it than that?
I think that's a great question, and I mean, I haven't done a study on this, but I would assume, I would guess that the main reason why people aren't doing this or not doing this is because they don't know about it. I had to discover it on my own. I mean, I I was signed up to teach a Intro to World Religions course for Atlantic University. I mean, this is how I found it, and I realized the students weren't really understanding the Buddhism section very well, especially Zen.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
as I went down that rabbit hole of learning more and more, like reading Alan Watts and reading Thich Nhat
Right.
Hanh, I stumbled right into mindfulness, and it blew my mind. It just popped. Wow, wow, that's what I need. And I can't tell you how many times I have seen the aha pop on students' faces. I mean, this stuff is so approachable. It's so um, normal, even. It's natural. It's a part of us. And then somebody just reminds you, pay attention to the present moment, have compassion and understanding for yourself, accept with non-judgment what's going on, and then choose your response. How do you want your mind state to be? Do you want it to be agitated, anxious, afraid, uncertain? No, nobody wants that. And typically we blame outside things for creating that, and that escalates the problem. So then we're just totally agitated, way away from the reality of the situation. So I think mindfulness is the key to kind of harnessing our mind. It's like training the mind in order to behave, really. I mean, most of the Eastern religion meditative practices, they call the mind the monkey mind, and some call it the
Yeah.
drunken monkey mind, because if you just observe it, it goes anywhere and everywhere it wants to. And the brain and the mind, well, the brain grabs memory through association, and the mind, thinks about all these thoughts based on that association. What do I mean by that? Um, if I say car accident, your brain, my brain, listeners' brains will all of a sudden access a whole lot of thoughts and memories on car accident. Some of them might be fearful about the future, some might be painful about the past, but they're all unique to you. So if we can recognize that the mind grabs memory and thinks about and projects thought out through association, then we can see how we get in this rabbit hole. We go deeper into and farther away from the present moment. Uh, a great key to manage that is simply labeling what's going on. What do I mean? Memory. I'm having a memory. Okay, that was a memory, and I'm going to return to the present moment. Or,
Mm.
wow, I'm really lost in thought. I'm thinking about this. Or maybe, like most of us in our culture, we're planning. We're doing lots of planning, spending lots of time in the future. We're not even there yet. Planning what we're going to do next. So if we can label it, then we can come back to the present moment. It's a real key to recognize that whatever is occurring in the mind and the body, it's occurring in the present moment, which means that we actually have the ability to change it. And one of the ways to do it is labeling. So we actually start with understanding. If we don't know what's going on, we can't change it.
James, you raised a very interesting point about not blaming external things, which brought to mind something for me that we have a lot of external distractions that maybe weren't so prominent in previous times throughout history. I'm referring specifically to technology and cell phone usage. And it begs the question, from my personal observation, is the cell phone and technology and the media and the kind of bombardment of things that are constantly drawing for our attention, is that become a hindrance to living a meditative life, one who practices mindfulness and tries to stay in this present moment awareness? What have you found with that?
Yeah, it's interesting how this is occurring in our culture. Um, just like anything, it can become a hindrance. Technology and more so companies and marketers and advertisers behind the technology uh, really are demanding everybody's attention. I mean, you can see it in commercials, you can see it in apps, um, and websites. We've learned as a culture how to harness people's attention, and
Right.
many of us have given up our even the knowledge that we have control over our attention. We've kind of allowed ourselves, or not all of us, but we can allow ourselves to give up our control of where our attention is and kind of give
Right.
it over to society to tell us what to do and what to watch and what to eat and how to dress and what to drive and so forth, even how to communicate. Um, so I think people aren't ignorant. I think that our current contemporary society, actually, it's very possible that these increased demands of our attention are actually what's driving this huge desire and comeback to have mindfulness in our lives, because we're starting to recognize that our attention is split 10 ways, and attention
Right.
split 10 ways is not valuable attention, you know. Um, Actually, attention is one of the key points in how to gain our mindful awareness at the present moment. Again, is where is my attention now? What am I focusing on? So, could a person be completely mindful and check Facebook regularly on their smartphone and type emails and get instant texts and everything and still be mindful? I think they can. I think they can. It's challenging, but I think they can. It's about, paying attention to the present. What am I doing now? It's uniting our mind, our awareness with the action. So if we know what we're doing while we're doing it, we're still being mindful. Just like martial arts. If we know what we're doing while we're doing it, it's that much more effective. It's when I
Right.
think we're split. When you and I are having a conversation, if I get a text message and say, "Hold on a second, I got to check this," then I'm more acting like I have an addiction, and and I can't help but it's stimulus and response, and I just immediately react instead of choose my response. So I think
Right.
we have to be wise. We have to, use skillful means to be able to use this technology in a way that's productive for us, because it can be quite a helper for us. It can also be a
Yeah.
complete hindrance. And the key, as you mentioned, is attention and awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. You raised such good points in that. And I think, like the Cayce material says, is that it depends on how you use it. These things
Hmm.
can be a stumbling block or they can be a stepping stone. And we are in such a unique time where we are kind of bombarded by a lot of things trying to pull our attention away. But you raised a great point in saying that it's an opportunity to really put this into practice. If you want to become somebody who is living a mindful life and becoming, more aware, we have more opportunity now than we've ever had for that. So,
Hmm.
and you always have to, try to remain focused on the positive, and that this technology has incredible benefits, in that it not only has it brought us together in a more interconnected way, which I think is great for where we're moving as a society. But it's also given us an opportunity to kind of get these ideas out there. For me, when I'm on Facebook, I have a news feed now that's full of conscious news. It's full
Hmm.
of sharing ideas about meditation, about holistic health, about mindfulness.
Hmm.
I'm subscribed to Thich Nhat Hanh's Facebook page, and you get these beautiful things from his page, and it really is about how you use the technology.
Hmm. I agree.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about your upcoming presentation at the A.R.E conference here in Virginia Beach. It'll be
Sure.
January 16th through the 18th.
Hmm.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your presentation will entail and what conference attendees can expect to take away from it?
Sure. Sure. Absolutely. I'd love to. My general presentation is that Sunday morning from 9 a.m. to noon, and if you were to attend, you would. First, I'm going to do a lecture. I'm going to talk about a lot of what you've been hearing me talk about today. Um, what is mindfulness? What does it mean? How do you use it? Why would I want to use it? Okay, I want to use it now. How do I do it better? What are some tips? And then I'm going to teach, like I mentioned, I said we need some formal meditation practice. So I'm going to teach people how to do that. I'm going to teach mindful meditation, sitting meditation, mindful walking. Then I'm going to lead, after a break, I'm going to lead the group through a longer session so people can really, really drop into the present moment. Have some extended time in this safe, contained environment with a person leading them through the meditations so they can really go deep and truly experience the present moment and get much more in touch with their own selves. You know, who am I? And what does that mean? And how do I want to live? You know, really, the answer is in you, and you just need to make the space to see the answer. So I hope to offer a nice container for people to be able to explore that. Additionally, something I'm excited about because I've never done this before. That Friday before the Sunday from 2 p.m. to 3:15 p.m., my father, John Van Auken, and I will be doing a basically like a dialogue talking about meditation and practice, meditation in daily life, and what that means to us. And if most of you know, we have different practices. His practice is his, and mine is mine, and um, I'm really excited to see what comes out of that discussion, and I think it's going to be really fun too. I really do.
Yeah, me too. I couldn't agree more. When I saw that on the schedule, I meant to ask you, had you guys done that format before, where you guys kind of sat down and had a dialogue, had a chat about, what your journey has been like, what his journey has been like, what your practices are, what his are, and kind of bring it together and kind of have that dialogue. It's a great format.
Yeah, we've never done it in public like this. We've
Yeah.
certainly talked about it on our own quite a bit, but there's something to be said when it's in that type of situation, mic'd up in front of the public. I'm really excited to see what emerges, and I really think something new will emerge there. So I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful. And will it be kind of a bit of an open forum as well, where you field some questions from the audience as well?
Absolutely.
Great. Wonderful. We'll make sure we give all of our listeners all the information they need to sign up for that.
Hmm.
I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on at AU, Atlantic University, as far as new developments. Do you have any
Oh,
things
yes.
that you can share with us in that regard?
Absolutely. I'm very pleased to announce that just 2 weeks ago, we received formal and official approval to begin um, having a new degree program. We will be launching a Master of Arts in Leadership Studies, which we are thrilled about. And it's going to have 3 specializations. And the first one, I'm pleased to tell you, is mindful leadership.
Oh, wow.
Then, yeah. So the second will be organizational leadership, and third, global leadership. So this is a whole new venture for us. We're going to be spending the entire year creating and launching this whole thing. We don't even have a website up for it yet. It is that new. So watch for us. If you know people out there who are interested in getting a Master of Arts in Leadership Studies, we expect, at least as I'm going to state it today, to begin the enrollment in the spring semester, which would be what you would probably consider winter. So it would start in
Mhm.
January of 2016. So that's when we expect that first cohort to begin. So if you're
Excellent.
interested, send me an email, james.vanauken@atlanticuniv.edu, and I'll put it in the file and we'll get you set up. So it's going to be great. It's really going to be great. It's something we're seeing more and more these days is this need to have real leadership, real leaders,
Right.
people
Right.
who are self-aware, who can listen, who do care about the community and the environment. And there's a difference between leadership and management. I mean, a manager knows how to get things done and knows the business inside and out. And that's what we want out of managers. Now, what do leaders know how to do? Leaders know how to take the group and say, this is what we have. And they know how to see the whole and say, this is where we need to go. They know how to use a whole team. They know how to create team buy-in and value all aspects of whatever organization or function the team has. Uh,
Right.
so it's something that I think is in high demand right now, and I think it will be even greater demand in the future.
Yeah,
So again,
absolutely.
I hope we're on the cutting edge of it as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's
Sure.
awesome, exciting news to come for Atlantic University. I guess a last note, is enrollment currently going on for Atlantic University?
Actually, we just finished enrollment
Okay.
for this spring semester. So everybody's about to start up January 12th. The new semester is going to go through. If people are interested in applying, taking courses at Atlantic, I would look toward the summer, but there's no reason to hesitate. If you're interested, go ahead and contact the school now, and we can answer your questions, get you all the literature, um, and get you on track. For those of you who don't know, we've got the Master of Arts in Transpersonal Studies. That's full on running, has been running for decades. We also have a certificate program in spiritual guidance mentor training. So if you don't want the full master's degree, or you don't qualify for admissions for the master's degree, check that certificate program out. It's really good. We get great reviews from it. And then we've got a third. We've got um, a graduate level certificate in integrated imagery regression hypnosis. And that is a 3-course certificate program with a residency requirement for each course. So students would come to the campus here in Virginia Beach for 4-day weekends for each course, learn regression hypnosis from a accomplished PhD faculty member, and get that full-on graduate certificate to be able to go teach it themselves. So check us out. We're here for you, and hope you will contact us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Seems like you guys got a lot going on over there, and I encourage everyone to get involved. And like you said, there's many opportunities for educational paths there, whatever fits into your schedule, which is wonderful. And James, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for all the hard work you've put in at Atlantic University, behind the scenes a little more now than before, but we're looking forward to seeing you on stage here coming up in January. So
Well,
thank
thanks,
you so
Brent.
much.
Thank you very much, and thank all of you who are listening.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, James. You have a wonderful day.
Absolutely.
Don't miss your opportunity to participate in an interactive presentation with James Van Auken here at the A.R.E. in Virginia Beach on mindfulness and present moment awareness, as James is a feature presenter at the upcoming conference entitled Experiencing Sacred Inner Realms, and this takes place from January 16th through the 18th. If you'd like to register for this or other conferences offered here at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, you can visit our website at edgarcayce.org/conferences. If you'd like to know more about the unique educational opportunities presented by Atlantic University, you can visit their website at atlanticuniv.edu. On behalf of everyone here at the Association for Research and Enlightenment and moretalk.tv, I'm your host, Brenton Bickerstaff, encouraging you to stay mindful in 2015. We are gifted with another year of opportunities for spiritual growth and a deepened understanding of all that is. I encourage everyone to strive for a meditative life full of love and compassion. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Reflections, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. And now it is time for the thought for the day here on Reflections, the wisdom of Edgar Cayce. And joining us as always is Dr. Bill Austin. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today on Reflections.
My pleasure, Brett. Always a treat to be here.
Honored to have you on. If you can go ahead and read the thought for the day today for our listeners.
Okay. This comes from reading 3027-2. There is progress, whether you are going forward or backward. The thing is to move. This has always been a favorite of mine. The thing is to move. Our perception of are we gaining, are we going forward, are we going backward, I don't think can be relied upon, but if we're sticking to that ideal that we've talked about in the past, and we're working, what may appear to be backstepping might actually be stepping forward. I don't know that we have the overall knowledge and ability to perceive what's actually going on with that. But all we can do is keep on moving towards that ideal. That ideal is so important. And if we are trying to move towards it, Cayce said this many times, it's in the trying. Don't look at the results or the quick results that appear to be there. Keep on trying, because that's what brings the results.
Absolutely. I love that. You raised a very good point about not so much worrying about the results. And I think that's an incredibly important thing, is that I find that the stronger I'm attached to the results, the less rewarding the experience is. And I think it has a lot to do with that losing the present moment, losing the now, because you project yourself into the future and think, what are the results going to be? And that becomes your focus. So the beauty of the now, the beauty of the present moment is lost, because all you can think is what's going to result from this. And I think another point that you raised that was great was something that was actually addressed in the Cayce material, was the idea of time and whether or not it's linear. And Cayce expressed that the idea of time is actually something that's created in our consciousness. It's not so much something that exists externally from our mind. A linear idea of time is something that is very much self-created, and we kind of all are doing that within ourselves and projecting it outwards. So when you
Mm.
talk about progress and whether you're going forward or backward, as this reading says, Cayce says the important thing is to move, because what he's saying here is it's not your idea of forward and backward might not really be the true reality of what's going on, because what we perceive as a backward step or a forward step, it's all progress because you're learning. It's all in the learning and the application of what you learn that is the true importance of spiritual growth.
Yes, I agree. And it's that purpose. What are we going towards? What's that ideal that we're
Right.
going towards? It's a good one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Always have those ideals to fall back on. Absolutely. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining me again on Reflections, the Wisdom of Edgar Cayce, for the thought for the day. It's always a pleasure having you on.
Oh, it's always wonderful to be here, Brent. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Have a
Of
great
course.
day.
You're welcome. You too.